Does your throat feel like it's stuck in your throat, but it won't come out? You cough repeatedly, drink water, try to clear your throat. Yet the same strange thing remains stuck in your throat. And the most surprising thing is, it might not be mucus at all, as millions of people think it's just mucus, but the truth is something else. Something that even doctors often don't talk about openly. Every morning when you wake up, you already feel tired because of that layer of thick phlegm in your throat, right? The first thing you do is clear your throat, not out of habit, but because if you don't, you feel like you can't speak clearly. You try to ignore it, but deep down a silent concern appears. Could this be a sign of something more serious? Could your lungs be in trouble? Could there be a hidden disease progressing in your throat without you knowing? The feeling of having something stuck in your throat for weeks, months, or even years is not only annoying, it plants questions that keep you awake at night. When night falls and the dry cough appears, you remain in the darkness wondering why nothing works. You have taken syrups, you have tried ginger tea, you have drunk plenty of water, but that thick phlegm returns every day. And the most disturbing thing is not the throat clearing. The most disturbing thing is feeling that you have lost control of your own body. I have heard many patients whisper to me during consultations that they fear a chronic infection, they fear cancer, they fear some rare disease advancing in silence. They are afraid to go to the doctor for fear of receiving a negative diagnosis. But they are also afraid of not going and continuing without knowing what is happening. So they live at a midpoint between anxiety and helplessness. If you are watching this video, it is very likely that you have felt this too. The exhaustion of clearing your throat in the middle of a meeting, the embarrassment of a hoarse voice in the morning, the frustration of a throat that never feels completely clear. But today I want you to pause for a moment and take a deep breath, because your greatest fear may not be the reality. There is a silent cause, much more common than you imagine, and in most cases, it is not as dangerous as you think. But if you do not understand it, you will continue fighting it in the wrong way. I know, that is precisely what makes your problem continue month after month. Now we must do something very important, not clean your throat, but clean the beliefs that have led you down the wrong path all this time. Because when we misunderstand the problem, any effort, no matter how constant it is, only leaves us more exhausted. The first myth I hear most often is this: it must be a cold that never goes away. It sounds logical, right? There is phlegm, there is throat clearing, so it must be a virus. But the common cold has a clear cycle. It appears, bothers you for a few days, at most 1 or 2 weeks, and then the body recovers. It is usually accompanied by nasal congestion, sneezing, fatigue, and sometimes a mild fever. If you have had this phlegm for more than 3 or 4 weeks without those symptoms, we are no longer talking about something acute. We're talking about something chronic, and viruses do not remain for that long. The second myth usually comes next. Maybe it is an allergy. You start thinking about dust, pollen, or pet hair. It is true that allergies can cause the sensation of mucus dripping down into the throat, but it is usually seasonal or related to specific exposures, and above all, it usually improves with antihistamines. If you have tried anti-allergy medication without any change, or if it happens to you all year long regardless of the season, then allergies are probably not the root of the problem. It may contribute in part, but it is not the main cause. The third myth is blaming the environment or tobacco. It is true that smoke and pollution irritate the respiratory mucosa. The body responds by producing more mucus as a defense mechanism, and that has a scientific basis. But in my practice, I see many people who have never smoked and live in areas with relatively clean air. And even so, they suffer from persistent phlegm. Therefore, the environment does not explain everything. And then there is the fourth myth, perhaps the most dangerous because it leads you to silently resign yourself. I am aging. It is normal. It is true that with age, the tissues change and the mucosa can become drier, making the mucus thicker. But living all day with the sensation of obstruction in the throat, constantly clearing your throat, and losing sleep because of a dry cough is not an inevitable consequence of aging. When we normalize chronic discomfort, we lose the opportunity to look for the real cause. Do you see? Each myth has a bit of logic, but none of them fully explains your situation. And as long as you believe in them, you will continue treating the wrong target. You will keep taking syrups for a virus that does not exist, medication for an allergy that is not the culprit, or you will accept the discomfort thinking that it is simply part of aging. So if it is not a cold, not an allergy, not just the environment, and not simply age, then what is really happening? The answer may surprise you, because the origin of the problem is not in the lungs, nor in the nose. It begins in a place that very few people imagine, and when I mention it, many of my patients exclaim that finally everything begins to make sense. And now we arrive at the part that almost nobody expects. The origin of that persistent phlegm is not in the lungs, it is not in the nose. It begins in the stomach, the true responsible. Condition has a rather long medical name, laryngopharyngeal reflux. But I want you to remember it in a simpler way. Silent reflux. It is called silent because more than half of the people who suffer from it do not feel burning or acidity behind the sternum. There are no typical signals that would immediately make you think about the stomach. And precisely for that reason, it goes unnoticed. Imagine your stomach as a container filled with powerful acid. That acid is necessary to digest food. Between the stomach and the esophagus, there is a sphincter that acts like a door. When you swallow, it opens to allow the food to go down. Then it must close firmly to prevent the acid from coming back up. But for reasons such as eating dinner very late, overeating, stress, or being overweight, that door no longer closes with the same efficiency. During the day when you are standing or sitting, gravity helps keep everything in its place. But when you lie down, especially at night, the situation changes. It is not necessary for you to feel an obvious rise of acid. The most problematic thing is the fine acidic vapors, almost invisible, that silently rise while you sleep. Those vapors can pass the esophagus and reach the larynx, the vocal cords, and the back of the throat. Unlike the stomach, the throat is not designed to withstand acid. It does not have a thick protective layer. So every night your throat may be exposed to a mild but repetitive chemical irritation. And here's the key point. I want you to understand that phlegm that bothers you so much is not the enemy, it is the shield. When the mucosa of the throat becomes irritated by acidic vapors, the body responds by producing more mucus to protect itself. It is a survival reflex. That is why, when you take syrups to eliminate the phlegm, you are trying to remove the protection without stopping the aggression. When you constantly clear your throat, you temporarily remove the mucus, but the body produces it again because the cause is still present. In this way, the vicious circle continues. When my patients understand this, they usually remain silent for a few seconds. Not out of fear, but because finally the pieces fit together. The morning hoarseness, the sensation of a lump in the throat, the dry cough at night, everything begins to have an explanation. But the story does not end with acid. There is an even more subtle factor that acts as the secret weapon in this process. And when you understand it, you will see more clearly why your problem has lasted for so long. Now we talk about the second protagonist of this story. If acid is the invader, pepsin is the weapon that accompanies it. Pepsin is an enzyme produced in the stomach. Its function is clear and logical. It helps break down the proteins in food so that the body can absorb them. Inside the stomach, pepsin is an ally. But when it leaves its natural place, everything changes. In silent reflux, the acidic vapors do not rise alone. They carry pepsin with them and deposit it on the mucosa of the throat, the larynx, and the vocal cords. The dangerous thing is that pepsin does not need to act immediately. It can remain there silently, like an unexploded mine, and the trigger will sound familiar to you. A cup of coffee in the morning, a glass of orange juice that you believe is healthy, a little vinegar in the salad. Any acidic substance that passes through the throat can reactivate the pepsin already attached there. When it activates, pepsin does what it is designed to do, break down proteins. But this time there is no meat or fish to digest. It acts on the proteins of your own throat tissue at a microscopic level. The damage may be minimal, but when it repeats day after day, the body is forced to react. And what is that reaction? To increase the production of mucus? To create a thicker and stickier layer of phlegm to protect the irritated area. That is why your throat feels heavy in the morning. That is why your voice is hoarse after sleeping. Not because you have spoken too much, but because the vocal cords have been exposed for hours to acidic vapors and pepsin. When you understand the role of pepsin, you realize that the problem is not only the acid that rises, It is the silent presence of an enzyme that continues irritating even when you do not perceive clear symptoms. And this completely changes the way we approach treatment. Now we enter the most important part. It is not theory. It is not a hypothesis. It is a real action plan to defeat silent reflux and pepsin, the two enemies that have caused inflammation, phlegm, and throat clearing for months. I do not believe in miracle solutions. I believe in strategy. And this strategy has 4 clear fronts: night, diet, daily habits, and natural support. You do not need to apply them all at the same time, but the more you implement, the more you will shorten the recovery time. The first front is the night. It is the moment when your throat is most vulnerable, because when you lie down, the help of gravity disappears. If you sleep completely flat, you create a direct pathway from the stomach to the esophagus and the throat. That is why the most important step is to create an incline. Raise the head of the bed between 15 and 20 centimeters. Do not pile up pillows by bending your neck because that can worsen reflux. You must elevate the entire torso. You can place blocks under the legs of the bed or use a wedge-shaped pillow. Gravity will do what medications cannot do. Another small but anatomically important detail is sleeping on the left side. Due to the natural shape of the stomach, when you lie on the left side, the gastric contents stay lower and farther from the esophageal sphincter. In contrast, lying on the right side facilitates the rise of acid. It is a simple change, but in my practice, I have seen remarkable differences. The second front is the dietary strategy. What you eat and when you eat it determines the intensity of reflux. The golden rule is 3 hours. The last meal, even a snack, must finish at least 3 hours before going to bed. The stomach needs time to empty. If you eat and lie down immediately, you are inviting reflux. Dinner should be the lightest meal of the day, not the heaviest. Fatty foods take longer to digest and increase gastric pressure. Prioritize lean proteins such as fish or chicken, cooked vegetables, and moderate portions of complex carbohydrates. Avoid fried foods, fatty sauces, and heavy desserts at night. During the first 3 or 4 weeks, I recommend significantly reducing common triggers: coffee and caffeinated tea, chocolate, carbonated beverages, alcohol, especially white wine, mint, tomato-rich foods, citrus fruits, vinegar, spicy dishes, or very fatty foods. These foods relax the esophageal sphincter or are acidic and reactivate the pepsin attached in the throat. The third front is daily habits. Hydration is important so that the mucus becomes more fluid, but it must be done correctly. Do not drink large amounts of water during meals because it distends the stomach and increases pressure. Take small sips throughout the day, between meals. A useful strategy is to rinse with warm water and half a teaspoon of baking soda. Do it upon waking up and after meals. Do not swallow it. The baking soda helps neutralize pepsin and soothe the irritated mucosa. After eating, chewing sugar-free gum with a fruit flavor can be beneficial. It stimulates the production of saliva, which is naturally alkaline. When you swallow, the saliva helps clean any acid that may have risen. Avoid mint flavor, because mint relaxes the sphincter and can worsen reflux. The fourth front is natural support and stress control. Chamomile infusion has a calming and relaxing effect, ideal for the night. Fresh ginger tea supports digestion and has natural anti-inflammatory properties. Prepare it with fresh ginger, and you can add a little honey if the throat is irritated. And finally, stress increases the production of gastric acid and alters digestive function. Controlling it is not a luxury. It is part of the treatment. Deep breathing, meditation, gentle walks, calm music, reading. Just 15 minutes a day of real relaxation can change the internal biochemical environment. This 10-point plan is not a theoretical list. It is a roadmap. You are no longer fighting the symptom. You are attacking the mechanism of the disease. And when you aim at the correct target, the body begins to respond. The phlegm will gradually decrease, the throat will become less irritated, and the constant throat clearing will stop dominating your life. You are no longer fighting the wrong battle. You are regaining control. I clearly remember Jose, year-old broadcaster. His voice was his profession and his identity. For 2 years, he lived distressed by hoarseness, and persistent phlegm. He tried syrups, sprays, and even considered leaving his job. When we analyzed his case in detail, the problem was not in the vocal cords as he thought, it was in his habits. He began applying simple changes, especially raising the head of the bed and strictly respecting the 3-hour rule before sleep, without expensive medications, without complex procedures. In just 1 month, his voice improved by approximately 80%. The phlegm almost disappeared. He no longer cleared his throat in the middle of a sentence. Sometimes what threatens your quality of life is not a serious disease. They are silent habits. Fortunately, we can change them. If you take away only one idea today, let it be this. Do not continue fighting the phlegm. Phlegm is not the enemy. It is the messenger. It is the defense that the body creates to protect itself from a silent attack. And that attack does not begin in the throat. It begins with the discrete reflux of acid and pepsin from the stomach. When you correctly identify the enemy, everything becomes clear. The measures we have mentioned are not random tricks. They are tactics aimed at the root of the problem. Raise the head of the bed so that gravity protects you. Finish dinner early to give the stomach time to rest. Eliminate trigger foods so you do not feed the fire. I have seen this repeat many times in consultation. When patients consistently apply the nighttime measures and adjust their diet, the throat begins to calm down. The defensive phlegm decreases because the body no longer needs to protect itself excessively. The voice becomes clearer. The sensation of obstruction disappears. You do not need to change everything at once. Start with 1 or 2 key measures. Tonight, raise the head of the bed and make sure to finish dinner at least 3 hours before sleeping. With just these 2 changes, many of my patients have noticed improvement in a few days. The solution is not in a miracle pill. It is in your kitchen, in your sleeping, posture, and in the habits you repeat every day. You have the knowledge and you have the plan. If this has been useful to you, share this video with that person who is always clearing their throat and feels something stuck in it. You may help them discover the real cause after years of frustration. And tell me in the comments what change you will start today. I always read your experiences. And finally, thank you for staying until the end. Remember, when the root heals, the body takes care of the rest.